All right, guys, gonna talk about Leviticus today. Hang on. Don't turn off the video. Don't turn off the video. I know a lot of people do not look forward to this in the next book, but I'm gonna give you a different perspective on this and show you why Leviticus is actually a really cool book that's part of the Old Testament in the Bible. Third book in the Torah. Here we go, Leviticus. Leviticus picks up where Exodus left off. If you recall, in Exodus, it ends with this huge tent, this tabernacle being built in order for Israel and God's presence to interact together. But right at the very end, Moses is not able to get into the tent. I mean, they built this huge tent specifically for one reason, and then right as he goes to walk in the front door, he can't. Leviticus is about the restoration of this relationship between Israel and God. So Israel had committed enough sin and so much sin that is what's prevented them from being able to get into the tent and be in God's presence. But as God always wants, God wants us to be forgiven. He wants to forgive us. He wants the covenant to be fulfilled. It was our fault that it got messed up, not God's fault. Therefore, he says, all right, we can fix this. If you do X, Y, and Z, this can be done. We can move on. We can move through this. So this book is God explaining to the Israelites on how to restore this relationship. It's primarily with three different things: rituals, priests, and purity expectations. So the rituals are three things: how to say thank you to God, how to say I'm sorry to God, and then you've got these 7 different feasts that occur throughout the year. The point of the first two are pretty obvious. It's to say thank you to God, to give thanks, and to say you're sorry. We already talked about it. That's pretty easy. The 7 ritual feasts that go on through the year are meant to serve as reminders to Israel of what God has done in the past leading up to this. So it's supposed to be this kind of this periodic reminder, like, hey guys, don't forget this, don't forget, and it's this good reminder of why we are worshiping God and why God did what He did. Then you have the priests. The priests are this representation here. So you've got God here and the people here, and you've got the priests here. The priests are the representation from the people to God. They are also the representation from God to the people. And there were specific requirements that had to be met of these priests. Obviously, you're this middleman. You're this interpretation between God and the people. So God has requirements for these priests of how they are expected to behave, how they're expected to be in their spiritual walk with God, and several different things. I mean, I would expect that too. You have job requirements for the employees in your job, at your place of work. This is the same thing. It's job requirements. So the priests, that's who the priests are. And then you have these purity standards, and it's going to deal with ritual purity and morality, moral purity as well. And so you have 2 times in Leviticus that this purity is mentioned. It's ritual purity and moral purity. Of course, you're coming into God's presence. You need to be pure. You need to be clean so that you can interact with the holy one true God who is perfect and who is clean. So that's where the hang-up usually is when a lot of people use Leviticus to... Oh, looks like Calvin's behind me playing with the cat. All right. A lot of times people will use Leviticus in order to bash the Bible and show all the things that are wrong because they have these weird laws that are, just like you can't expect people to do this, and it's so backwards, and God is so mean because He's expecting these of the people. Okay, that is not true. That is not what Leviticus was supposed to be. Leviticus is saying the Israelites screwed it up, and so God is giving the Israelites an opportunity to fix this, and this is how they can do that. So they were expected to do this in order to repair that relationship that they messed up. Okay, going back to the impurity thing. They would have certain things that they would do. There's 3 or 4 different things that are mentioned in Leviticus that make somebody impure. Impure is not this permanent lifestyle, permanent state. It is a temporary state. Being impure is not something that lasts forever. It's temporary, and you cannot enter into God's presence while in this impure state. That's the problem. It was doing things that are done, like touching dead bodies. Yes, if you work in a morgue, you're going to touch dead bodies. That doesn't mean you can't be a Christian. What it meant was you can't go to your job at the morgue and touch dead bodies and then go into the tabernacle and worship God. You had to first do something that removed the temporary impure state in order to not die when you enter into God's presence, because there's two examples of that in Leviticus of people that rebelled and did not listen to the rules. All it is this way for us to go from being unclean to clean so that we can be in the holy God's presence. That was the point. God wanted us to do these things so that we could come into his presence. Okay. Moving on. At the end of the book, it's this call to fulfill the covenant. So we go through all these rules. You've got the priests, the rituals, the purity. You've got all these rules and how they're going to fix this. And then right at the very end, Moses steps up and says, we want to fulfill this covenant. We want to do this. Is good for us. So he calls the people to fulfill the covenant and to do these rules. That's a great thing. And I'll tell you why. Because if you look forward just a smidge into Numbers, the first sentence talks about Moses meeting with God in the tent. So because of the book of Leviticus, because this happened, the Israelites were able to repair their relationship with God and his holy presence. And then Numbers is not a very exciting book to read, but Numbers is an exciting book to be there because it means Leviticus worked, that the Israelites worked together and repaired that relationship with God, and then were able to go into the tent. Moses actually did finally get into the tent that God intended for them to worship him inside. Wow. Who knew Leviticus could actually be a really cool, good book? That's the point of this. I want you to understand what exactly you are getting into when you're reading this book. All right, there it is, Leviticus. I will hope to see you in the next book of Numbers. It probably won't be a very long video. Have a good day. I'll see you next time.